Elon Musk says the laptop class needs to get off their moral high horse when it comes to remote work. I wanted to go over this interesting article that I came across today in regards to Elon Musk commenting on his thoughts and feelings in regards to working from home. Sorry, I can't even talk. I'm just already fumbling this. I'm doing great. Doing great, guys. All right, so let's get into this. Chief executives trying to bring employees back to the office argue that working from home leads to less engaged and less productive workers, but Tesla CEO Elon Musk is going one step further, calling the practice morally wrong. In an interview with CNBC on Tuesday evening, Musk argued that tech workers, who he characterized as the laptop class, were unfair in demanding privileges that other people like service workers or factory employees could not enjoy. This is an interesting take here. I think this might be an L take. You're going to work from home, and you're going to make everyone else who made your car come work in the factory. You're going to make people who make your food that gets delivered, they can't work from home. Musk asked, "Does that seem morally right?" Oh, it got commercials going. That's great. People should get off their GD moral high horse with the work from home BS, he said. They're asking everyone else to not work from home while they do. During the U.S.'s stay-at-home orders in the early days of the COVID pandemic, white-collar workers were able to stay at home while workers deemed essential, often lower income or from minority populations, had to venture outside to go to work. In-person work sometimes led to COVID outbreaks in sectors like the meatpacking industry, where working from home was not possible. I think that this is an L take, and I'll tell you why I think this is an L take. There's a lot that goes into this. I don't think this was the best way to communicate this message. And this is probably, recently we were talking about the annual shareholders meeting that Tesla had just had, and how there are some shareholders still to this day, this is nothing new, but some shareholders still to this day were bringing up the fact that they felt like, what is with this commercial, dude? This is like, this will not stop. They kept bringing up the fact that that Musk, seems to be split, and it's not good for the company, and so I think it's extremely hypocritical for him to be making a statement like this when you know that when this guy goes to the Twitter headquarters, you know that he is remotely working on stuff for Tesla. You know that he's remotely working on stuff for SpaceX. When he's over at the Tesla headquarters, he's remotely working on stuff for Twitter, and he's remotely working on stuff for SpaceX, and vice versa, and all the way around. So my question for him is, okay, if this is the stance you're going to take, and this is the stance that you're going to deem as morally wrong, because that's essentially what he's saying. He's asking the question, does that seem morally wrong? He's essentially hinting to this being a morally wrong belief system, calling it a laptop class, saying that you're privileged for having this. Then what gives him the right to be privileged? Would he say it's just because he's the owner? Well, then the argument could be made, well, you're just privileged to be the owner. Like, you bought into this. If you want to make the argument that it's not fair for the factory workers, that they have to come in at their job level, why isn't that the CEO, or why isn't that the business owner doesn't have to come in and be there? I know he essentially hired a Twitter CEO, and I think I haven't been keeping up with SpaceX, but the thing is like, you're not in a position to lecture anyone when you are living that lifestyle in and of yourself. And there is no way you can tell me that you are that you're dedicating just as much time to one company as you are the other. That's impossible. You're just one person. Like, you are splitting that up, and you are delving a little bit of your time to each. He says he works 6 days a week, and he's worked that for a long time, but he's privileged enough to choose that lifestyle. He gets to choose whatever he wants to do. But the thing is like, during those, there's only 6 days in a week, and each company demands a full-time representative there to make good decisions for them. So I don't understand what gives him the right or ability to be able to critique people in this way. Now, I am not sold on any of it. I'm not sold on, full remote work all the time. And I'm also not sold on, going back into the office. Excuse me. Give me a second here. I'm not sold on full going back into the office. I don't know, because I haven't seen much research about what is the most effective way for staff members and employees and companies to operate. I really think this has a lot to do with the type of company that you're in and what is required of that company. But Musk has been a longtime critic of remote work. Last June, the Tesla CEO ordered staff back to the office full time, even as other companies were gingerly trying and often failing to get employees back in the office just a few days a week. Musk cited fairness in an internal email, noting that asking corporate employees to come in for 40 hours a week was less than what we ask of factory workers. Musk also joked on Twitter at the time that Apple employees who refused to come into the office were being lazy. Musk also ended Twitter's permanent remote work policy last November in one of his first acts as the social media company's CEO, though he later softened his demands when more employees than expected were willing to quit over the issue. And that's really what it comes down to. For me, essentially, if I am in a position where I am, having to make these kind of decisions, it really just comes down to what's the goal here? What are we trying to achieve? What are we trying to accomplish? What are going to be the costs of taking a stance on this that may not be deemed as tolerable enough for the staff? Because if you're in a market where you're the biggest game in town and you don't have any other competitive companies trying to hire, then you are able to get away with a lot with your staff. And I'm not saying that's fair. I'm just saying that it seems to be the case, right? But with this situation, especially Twitter being where it's located, it's like, look, man, there are so many other companies around you that are just as enticing for people to go work for and are very much more lenient and also aren't attracting all this crazy attention, being you are the person coming in and taking over this company. Like, you bring all of this attention to you that would oftentimes be cited as being negative, if not sometimes positive, but a lot of times negative. I mean, that's just, it is what it is. He likes to stir the pot, and so there's a price to pay to have that as your leadership in your organization. Tesla's CEO has also praised those who went beyond standard working hours, celebrating employees in the company's Shanghai factory for burning the 3 a.m. oil, even as U.S. workers are trying to avoid going to work at all. In an interview last May, Tesla's Shanghai factory at the time operated under a closed-loop system amidst China's tough COVID prevention regime, with workers sleeping and eating on site to prevent any disruption to production due to an outbreak. I mean, that's just crazy, man. I don't know if, I'm not going to just take this at face value and just, wholeheartedly accept that this piece here is true. Unfortunately, in today's day and age, you can't do that anymore. So I haven't done any research into it. I haven't looked into this to make sure that this is actually accurate, what they're saying here. But if that is accurate, it's an L take. It's an L take all the way around. It's an L take because it further separates the gap between the people high up and the people that are working. And there is a balance, whether you like it or not. They need each other. They need each other. They need someone at the helm who's leading the company, who's going to, look out for the best interests of the organization, and ultimately the best interests of the organization oftentimes, I'm not going to say all the time, but oftentimes means what's best for the staff. However, there are times where it becomes a hard situation and people get screwed. They get into really, really unfair situations. They get really, really mistreated. It becomes a very ugly thing, and there's always a balance there of how to operate in a way that that is uplifting to your staff, but also uplifting to the organization. And it is definitely questionable whether sometimes, whether that's even possible all the time. There will be times, I think, where one has to be sacrificed for the other, and that is an unfortunate thing when it comes to this sort of thing. And I think that's why it's so messy and it's so ugly. But making comments like this and making stances like this is pointless and not worth the attention that it brings, the further negative attention that it brings. And honestly, it makes you look so separated from the situation. It's in and of itself hypocritical, because there is no way this dude is giving as much attention as some of his full-time remote workers are to, like let's say for Twitter, or let's say even for Tesla. There's no way that he's giving just as much attention that a full-time remote worker at Tesla is giving to that company. There's no way. It's impossible. There is no way. He personally isn't doing it unless he's got somebody hired to do it for him. which, just to give you an idea, if there was someone that was working two full-time jobs, let's say someone was working at Twitter and Tesla, a full-time staff member at both, they would get fired for sure. That would be considered a violation. And I'm not saying that's unfair. I'm just saying that that's just a fact of the matter. And there's been a lot of shareholders that have come forward and said that they don't feel it's right for him to be split time on all these companies. I don't care how many days a week you're working. You are not able to give a company the full amount of time it needs to work. I don't care how smart you are. I don't care if your brain goes off 24/7. It is impossible. He is only human. He can't do that. That's just, I mean, that's a fact of life. Really. Working from home. Bosses and employees are still debating how long workers should be in the office. More companies are pushing for employees to come in at least part of the time. CEOs argued that working from home hurts the company culture and claim that fully remote workers lose opportunities for feedback and mentoring, hurting their growth. That is also a bad take. They claim that fully remote workers lose opportunities for feedback and mentoring, hurting their growth. Yeah, it's just, I don't know. I need to do more research into this. I'm trying to fight against my own stupidity and fight against my own desire just to jump on a bandwagon. I don't want to do that. I know that I haven't done enough looking into this to really see, okay, what does the data say? Are companies experiencing less productivity? I just haven't looked into it. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if they were. My initial leaning was that remote work would cause less productivity, but then there was stuff coming out when it first happened saying that more productivity is happening because of remote working in certain situations. And so I know it's not one size fits all. Each company has its own culture. Each state has its own culture. Each marketplace for employees and all that stuff has its own culture. So I know that each one has to find its own way. I know anecdotally, a lot of people that I know have said this on multiple videos, are moving more towards a hybrid system, and I'm seeing more and more jobs pop up in the marketplace that are more of a hybrid system. There are some days where you work from home, there's some days where you work in the office, and then those days often rotate. So the battle may be reaching an equilibrium around hybrid. There you go, hybrid work. I spoke before. I should have been just reading. Where employees come into the office for part of the week. The number of U.S. firms demanding in-person work 5 days a week dropped over the past 3 months from 49% to 42%, according to data from Scoop Technologies, an analytics firm tracking workplace strategies. Still, companies are trying to get their employees to come in more often. On Tuesday, AT&T CEO John Stankey told Bloomberg Radio that the telecoms company would require managers to work in person 3 days a week, starting as early as July in some cases. The company will also be closing some of its offices, potentially requiring some employees to relocate. So there you go. So we see actually shifting on two ends of the spectrum there. They're closing some of the offices. I don't know if that's financial or if that's just because there's not enough staff coming in to justify the offices, but they are moving more towards that. What I think is I don't want to take the conspiratorial side and say that these are small steps that guys like John Stankey are taking to ultimately force staff back into the office full time. I think that all of this is still experimental. That's my initial take on it without looking into the data or anything. I think a lot of it is experimental, and I think it's really hard to nail down right now what is more effective or what is most effective. I think everyone would traditionally lean to being in the office 5 days a week is the most effective way to do things. I, in my own bias, lean towards that myself. But I have to acknowledge that, of course, being a staff member, I did enjoy remote work. And I will tell you, in my past with some of my sales positions, a lot of those positions were remote work anyways, prior to the pandemic. I would be working from home and being in the and then my office time would actually be on the field running appointments. So it's not something that's completely new to me, but it is something that I can understand why a lot of organizations are struggling with it. So also on Tuesday, asset manager BlackRock asked employees in an internal memo to start coming in 4 days a week, up from 3. So that, I think that each company is experiencing its own challenges in this, and I'm not so sure that it's a one-size-fits-all situation. But what I do know is taking stances like this, where you're going to take the high road and say, does that seem morally right to you, is just ridiculous, especially when your own lifestyle doesn't line up with it. I watched the Joe Rogan interview he originally did with Elon Musk, and he kept praising him for, his mind and the way his mind works and how he's so intelligent. And, and this is the thing. You could be a really, really smart guy. He's way more intelligent than I am or that I ever will be, and that's true. But that doesn't mean that you have superpowers and you're superhuman and you can do multiple things at once. That just doesn't exist. In any other situation, if you had a CEO who was a CEO of a company and also was part-time at another company, everyone would point at that guy and say, dude, that's a dumb thing to do. That's not running your company well. There's no such thing as part-time CEOs. Everyone knows that, all the way down excuse me, to the Shark Tank guys, when the first question they ask is, are you working this job full-time, if they were going to invest? And I know for a fact, being a part of a startup that had to raise capital, the first question they ask is, who's working the job full-time? And it's something that could make or break your potential in the future with investors. And so it's an L take across the board, in my opinion. It's an L take across the board. It's something that shouldn't even be said. I think that this guy, being in the position that he's in, has no place to lecture anyone, and that he really should just be more loose on this matter, and not turn it into a moral issue, and just say, look, there's some things that work for some, and there's some things that work for others. Clearly it didn't work fully for him at Twitter, and he had to quickly change his position on it. And so, but however, if he wants to sit there and try to lecture people, he's more than welcome to do it, obviously. But he hasn't been able to hold to that position, obviously, with his own companies. So that was just my quick take on it. I just wanted to shotgun this out. I came across this article. I think it was an interesting thing to talk about. What do you guys think in the comment section below? Maybe I'm off my rocker. Maybe I'm crazy. I mean, let me know. Like, tell me, am I completely missing it? Is there something I'm completely missing? Just be like, comment creator, dude, you're an idiot. Like, here's what we're seeing. Have you looked at this? Let me know. I'm curious. I really want to know what other people are thinking about this, because this is a very hot topic right now as we transition from this pandemic phase of doing business into trying to have some sense of going back to what it was prior to that. And I think that the world is never going to look the same as it did before, and I think that the job market needs to adjust as well, especially with this advancing technology. I mean, at least I think that now. I could be convinced either way. I'm not sold on any of it yet, but hope you guys enjoyed this. Please like the video. That really does help me, and I really appreciate it. Comment below, like, share, subscribe, the whole nine, and I will catch you guys in the next one.